Well, here we go, the beginning of the silly season. Elections are coming, and we're going to start trying to learn a little bit about each of our candidates. So let's start with an introduction, if there is somebody who doesn't know you.
Hi, Al. Thank you for having me again. My name is Kingkade. I'm chairman of the Milford Board of Selectmen, and I'm up for re-election for the April 3rd election, and I hope to get re-elected.
Now, I'll start the show, as you know, with the same question, but I'll give you a hint. The answer is not acceptable that I'm going to ask you, why should I vote for you? You cannot say, because I got a fantastic wife and a really cool kid. We all know that already.
Well, I definitely would give Lisa and Caleb a plug, because they're my two biggest supporters, but also they're the ones that just keep motivating me to keep plugging along and keep doing what I love.
So you can't use that. And nope. I'm going to ask you, Willie, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Well, I hope I still bring a unique, a unique approach to the table. I've been around for a while now. I've held positions in Milford going back, if you count town meeting, 20 years. People know that I'm not shy. I set goals for myself, why I want to run. When I achieve those goals, I let my voters know. I'm very honest with my voters, with the voters, I should say. And like I said, I hope I've at least proven myself to be resourceful. And people call me, I call them back. Sometimes even when they don't necessarily like the answer or what the resolution is. But I've always had a policy of 24 to 48 hours, getting back to someone, making contact, getting the answer. I still hold monthly office hours, which Dino did before me, so I felt that that was important. So with the exception of summer months, when I learned that folks didn't come by during June and July and August, excuse me, that I have hours the last Wednesday of the month, and I've had as few as 3 people, and I've had as many as 13 come. And some people actually prefer that face-to-face, other than, again, other generations, I get a lot of emails and things like that. So I hope, to answer your question a little bit more concisely, I hope people like what I bring to the table. I'm honest, and I get back to them.
Now, you bring up Dino and the previous board. Mm-hmm. When you first started, it was more of an exciting board. It seemed like there was more emotion. Tell us about the current board, because everything seems to be a lot more calm and quiet.
Yeah, I know, and I think that's true. I was trying to think when you said, that when I first joined the board, it was more emotional. I think I, again, walked in on 2 folks that had been serving for a very long time together. And what similarities they had and differences they had, I was literally more or less in the middle. Since Mike has joined the board, I got to say that we have debate. We come still from very different perspectives, but we are very like-minded, and not necessarily on, again, specifics, but how we want the town. I mean, I've been talking about quality of life issues for the last 3 years, if anything. I'm a broken record about that, and that's been my mantle and something I still want to strive for. That's what Milford needs right now, is for someone to concentrate on the quality of life issues for its residents. But both Bill and Mike bring that to the table as well. When I'm talking about going after overcrowding, absentee landlords, the properties on Central Street that have been collapsing for 20 years and why that's been acceptable, and that's when I do get emotional. I don't understand why that was acceptable for so long. The board's right there with me. And I got to tell you, I really appreciate that.
So now when you start looking at quality of life, sometimes it feels like people are talking about world peace. Mm-hmm. It's a concept, do you love your mother? Well, of course I do.
Exactly.
Your mother would beat you if you did.
Yep, absolutely.
But what are the big issues you think we have to address to improve the quality of life in Milford?
Well, I think some of it is as simple, and that's how I started the campaign 3 years ago. I think it's as simple as aesthetics. Now, not everyone takes care of their property the same way, and that's not necessarily what I'm talking about, whether someone cuts their lawn every Saturday and someone does it, the third Saturday, so it's a little longer. I'm talking about, again, buildings with collapsed roofs in an area of town where people are rebuilding on just the opposite side of the street and thriving businesses are. When you drive by on trash day and after the trash man comes and throws everything out, there's still debris all over the place. When there's a 3-family home on West Street that, has beautiful neighbors on either side and, there's 27 bags of trash out, we know that there's a problem. And I think those are the things that just aren't acceptable. So whether I'm on the Board of Selectmen and I reach out and I get help from the building department that does report to me and to the board, but I also work with the Board of Health that has put on some of the most stringent regulations in the country, never mind the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I think just all working together, those are the quality of life issues that I'm talking about, because people driving down Main Street, and I hear it from realtors all the time. People come into town, if they see this, they go, I don't really like that.
Not the place I want for my family.
Exactly, and as we know, for growing up here and living here and raising our children here, this is a great town. No matter what issues people we have or issues that are perceived out there, we have a great town. You want to get a great education, you'll get one. You want to live next door to great neighbors in a great neighborhood, you're going to. And I think that's what you and I always share, calling this place the center of the universe. We could have gone anywhere to raise our families. You did leave, and you came back to raise your family. I mean, to me, that says a lot, and there's so many more of us out there. And now I'm talking more and more with my peers, because when I first ran for office, I wasn't talking to my peers. My peers were 22 years old as well and had no interest and thought I was crazy for wanting to get involved. Now my peers are here, own homes, raising their children, and now I'm talking to them as well, and I'm hearing all the same things. And I think that's really the top priority.
There's always the balance of how much do we spend versus how much we can do.
Yes.
And there's always profanity used in many towns. Words like 2.5 override, debt exclusion, to me,
Yes.
they're the most profane words we can say in town hall.
And I agree with you.
How do you feel about the financial conditions of Milford?
Well, the financial conditions of Milford are, I guess I can honestly say unbelievable if we're comparing ourselves to surrounding communities. And not just surrounding communities that border us, I mean surrounding communities. I would challenge our finances to any other town or city in the Commonwealth. But I think, again, you talk about that argument about how much you can spend and how much you can do. It's obviously a discipline. And it's something I can take credit for and you can take credit for, being on the FinCom, for continuing that. But that started way before I got on the board. I just have a very similar philosophy, as do my current board members, that want to see that discipline go through. Now, at the same time, I don't think the town of Milford should be going without anything. So that's why I think where a lot of those capital improvement plans come in, and planning for the future and everything like that. Because again, we still are in a world where we need to be and remain competitive to all of our surrounding towns, especially in an age where you can live in Milford, get all the services for the amount of taxes you pay, and still send your child to another school system, and the money follows the child, which I believe in having that right and that ability. And it's also a good motivator for us to stay competitive, to keep having the programs. I mean, when I was on the school committee, the town brought in so much money on school choice. And I know there's been a little difficulty over the last few years, but again, people came here for sports, they came here for theater, they came here for music. I think we have to hold on to that, but we also have to keep looking ahead at, and again, not reinventing the wheel, but seeing what other towns are doing, and to make sure we stay competitive. So, if someone makes a good argument, they come before the FinCom, they go before town meeting, and we don't say no too often. We vet a lot, and we prioritize a lot, but it might not be, it's rarely a no. And that's what I like about it too, because people put the time in to say, that's 2 years away, because these are the priorities right now, but it's never a no.
Now, a lot of times people make the comment about town meeting. You guys never argue, or you never turn down town meeting articles. The selectmen get up, they present them, and everybody supports them. What do you say to people who say that?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what I say. First of all, if people watch town meeting, they'll see that there's generally debate. There always seems to be a couple of controversial articles at every meeting.
Yeah, but never money articles.
No,
It's
and
chickens and...
Yep, no, you're absolutely right. But I think the money ones, and then when you get to having, and the difference between our neighboring towns and us is having a representative town meeting. The one thing we can unequivocally say about our representative town meeting members is they're engaged. They pay attention. They read the newspaper. They read the crier. They listen to the radio. They know what's happening. Those are the folks that are very familiar with how the whole process works. And again, if anybody has a question for their town meeting members, they should reach out to them as well. But town meeting members in the town of Milford, because they're elected and it's a representative form of government, I mean, they're engaged. And they know what it means to go before the FinCom 27 times and to fight for it and to make your case. And it's not fight for it because it's a board of naysayers. It's because there's 15 ladies and gentlemen on that board that you better go in prepared with, because they will ask you everything it takes to get to that final answer so that they can support what you're presenting.
And I think that's the biggest thing. People don't see how much debate goes on. By the time May comes along, we've already had those private arguments or discussions.
Yep. But they're not even that private anymore. I mean, I had joined the FinCom the first year that cameras were brought in. And the thing, from being on the school committee where we were obviously on cameras, the 9 years I was on, and then going to FinCom, it wasn't a transition for me, obviously. But hearing folks, meaning the folks watching or paying attention out there, ones critiquing town meeting as a rubber stamp, are now seeing
how much goes in.
How much goes in. So I think a lot more people, as they're flipping through the Milford channels, are catching those meetings, and people have a greater understanding now. Not that everyone wants to spend their free time at home watching us here or watching the Finance Committee or the Board of Selectmen meetings, but they have the ability to. And I think a lot more people are catching that and knowing what goes on a lot more.
So what do you think the key is? We've had 11 out of 12 years with a surplus, and people find that strange. You know, the biggest arguments in Milford is how do we spend our surplus?
Right.
What if somebody said, what's the key, Willie? What would you say?
Well, to me, it's actually, I mean, witnessing it for as long as I have firsthand, it's pretty simple. I mean, we don't borrow up to the amount we can from our taxpayers. We don't, what that allotment is, we don't spend. So it's almost, we always leave ourselves a cushion. So as we get ready for the annual town meeting, we're already saying, wait a minute, we got to put this $1.5 million, $2 million away, and then we'll worry about what we can spend when we have our special town meeting, or more or less our capital spending town meeting, because that's really what it's turning into, and which I greatly support. So I think it's just a matter of leaving yourself buffers. I mean, we talk about 2.5 overrides or debt exclusions. Before we ever
No, we don't.
even, well, today we are. You brought it up as a topic of conversation. Before we could even possibly, worst catastrophe, before we even get to having a discussion or a debate about a 2.5 override or debt exclusion, we'd at least have to borrow up to the levy limit.
Right.
I mean, we don't even do that, which again, is a great thing. It's automatically leaving a cushion, but it's also not taxing our people to the maximum we can. But it's come to be second nature of a kind of a level of responsibility here in Milford.
I've heard a comment, and I've had a strong reaction to it, so I'll ask you. If they can't afford to live in Milford, they ought to move. What would you say to that?
Well, I mean, I don't know who they are, never mind who's saying it, but who they are who can't afford to live in Milford. But I want our folks to be able to stay in Milford as long as they can. I know at some point if we're talking about our seniors or our elderly.
Who else Who else are those comments, those barbs thrown at?
So if that's who we're talking about, our elder Milfordians, well, we should be doing whatever it takes for people to stay in their homes. And I think we do a lot of that, most we can, that the statutes allow us to. But we have so many seniors that get breaks on their property taxes because they want to work, and they're in town hall, and they're at the senior center, and they're volunteering, they're at the youth center, they're at the library. And I think that's a great opportunity. But whether they're physically able to volunteer, I mean, let's face it, we have some 85-year-old seniors in this town that there's no stopping them. They're up in the morning, they're late, they're volunteering, they're at the hospital, they're doing whatever it takes. But that being said, if people aren't able-bodied, but they still want to stay in their homes, I think we have a social obligation to do whatever we need to at least investigate our opportunities.
Well,
we don't
these
want
are-
people leaving.
These are the people who built Milford. You know, I mean, we're here and we joke about how lucky we are to be at the center of the universe, but we're here because our seniors who are living on whatever, $1,200, $1,500 a month, put all the time into building this place.
Yep.
So I get very upset when I hear that.
Yep.
Because like you said, who are they?
Yeah.
I think what you said was profound. They are us.
Yep. Because I honestly have not heard that, and
Good.
and I hope on the campaign over the next few months I certainly don't.
So now we start looking at people coming into town. You mentioned they drive through Main Street. You're a selectman. If somebody was to stop you and say, why should I move to Milford? What would be your elevator pitch?
Well, quite honestly, first I'd let them know right off the bat I'm biased. And I think that's an important part of the conversation. But again, what that biasness brings is the experience of being born here, growing up here, going to school here, getting a college education, coming back. I mean, I grew up, neither one of my parents had a degree. They both came from working class families. They both worked their behinds off to make sure we had everything that we needed. And, it wasn't an option for us to go to college. Neither one of my parents who had the opportunity was, you're going to college. Go study some more. You're going to college. So I think being told things like that, making sure that, we had jobs at 13 and 14 and 15 years old. And it wasn't because I was literally working to clothe myself. I wasn't. But it was still teaching you at that age to have a job, get somewhere on time, figure out a skill, earn a paycheck, and those are all life lessons. I think all of that I experienced in the town of Milford. And I don't know anybody who doesn't want their children to experience that. And again, I look back at the schools, and I did 9 years on the school committee, and I would say if I didn't meet my wife, I would hopefully still be on there. I loved it. I think it's the biggest piece of the puzzle in the town of Milford. Never mind the biggest budget, but our schools are what's going to keep people coming and what's going to keep people here. So from a whole town perspective, we have to do whatever it takes to keep ourselves invested in our school systems. And I think we do that. That would be my pitch to someone coming here wanting to move here with a family.
So now when you talk about the school system, let's put it on the table that a lot of people are scared about the diversity in Milford.
Yes.
That they look at the Milford scores and they say, those scores don't look as good as some of the towns around us. Maybe I shouldn't be here, or if I want to move here, I should send my children out. What would you say to somebody who is worried about their children getting a good education in Milford?
Yep. Well, I think, again, for those of us who experienced an education years ago and now our children, my child, is getting an education here in the town of Milford, I think, again, they get a great one. It's also what you make of it. I think when you look at scores as a whole, my son has disabilities. He's probably never going to help the district by taking a standardized test. He may, but he may not. But he still has a value here in the school system and in our town. And I look at that as with people with disabilities as well as people who come here and don't speak the language. However, that doesn't mean we accept it. We should be doing whatever it takes and trying every option to make sure every one of those kids moves up a little bit. Now, if your child comes here and is a native speaker and born in Milford or moves in at an age where we're starting their education from kindergarten up, we know that those kids can do as well as they're able to and as well as they're supported. So again, we still have kids graduating, going to Ivy League schools, and we still have kids, regardless of their socioeconomic background, joining the military or going into the workplace. So I think when you look at scores, you look at them collectively. And yeah, they don't always match up to some other, less
Surrounding
diverse towns, I'll say. But now from the other side is, if you get in and you're supporting your children and they're working to the best of their abilities, you go into the workforce. I mean, my office, I have 125 employees. My office looks like the United Nations. And whether it was my 4 years at UMass Amherst or growing up in Milford, where even my generation had a diverse population. Maybe we didn't have an Ecuadorian population, but we still had a diverse population. Maybe we didn't have, that's why they start pigeonholing people. Or maybe we didn't have a lot of Brazilians, but I had a lot of every other nationality growing up, whether it was, folks from Egypt. I had friends from African nations. I had friends from all over the world. Diversity isn't new to Milford. I mean, another organization I'm very proud of is another one we belong to, our Prospect Heights Mayors Association. I don't know, you guys talk about diversity 50, 60, 100 years ago. You all lived literally on top of one another. You figured it out. So I think that has a lot of positivity to it as well.
Well, I always loved it because, we talk about diversity. And somebody once asked me, how did that affect you growing up? And I laughed because I said, we were too busy living diversity to worry about its socioeconomic impacts. The biggest thing was if we heard a new joke, you had to get down and say it real quick. Otherwise, those kids from the plains, the Italian side, would make it into a Portuguese joke. It was the same dang joke.
Of course, yeah. Fill in the blank.
To me, the great equalizer was always Water Street. Because when you went over the hill to the band concerts in Hopedale, at that point, the kids from Luby Ave, the Plains, whatever, if anybody messed with them, turn your hat, and you say, wait a minute, they're Milford.
Yeah.
They are family. Now, as soon as you came back over, you said, now get out of the Heights and go back.
Go back to your own neighborhood.
Go back to your own neighborhood. You had that rivalry, more like cousins.
Yep.
But the minute we stepped out, they were more like brothers.
Yep. I think we're still a lot like that. I think it's still a very familial background where we can have our arguments and we can scratch and claw and fight over $1 or whatever it is, a philosophy. But someone from the outside starts, throwing criticisms our way. We all kind of get our back up, and we should, because it's a great town.
Now, when we start looking at the different programs in Milford and what we offer, I mean, we'll always say any tax amount is too much.
Well, I like that we start there.
Yeah. I mean, whatever you're charging me, it's too much. But let's be, if somebody asked you, am I getting good value for my tax dollar in Milford, what would you say?
Well, I would say absolutely, because we have trash pickup, and as long as I'm on the Board of Selectmen, I would fight tooth and nail never to pay additionally outside of our tax bill for our trash. We're not buying trash bags. I mean, I know those go hand in hand, but either paying a trash fee or buying trash bags,
I remember
sorry.
when Lexi lived in Worcester and they had the little yellow designer trash bags.
I drive to the Ashland train station between Hopkinton and Ashland. You see, I don't know how much trash bags cost, and I hope never to find out other than the ones I get at Shaw's. School bus pickup, we've said that for years and years and years, as long as I can remember, whether it was the finance committee members or when I was on the school committee, saying none of our kids are ever going to pay to get on a school bus.
Pay extra.
Pay extra. It's within our tax bill. Leaf pickup. I don't use it. All my trees are in the back in the woods, so they go back, the leaves go in the woods. But you drive around, there are so many people that take advantage of that service.
It seems to be one of the most popular
It absolutely
services that ever got put in. And I'll admit, the idea of paying the $700 to have my leaves pulled away, not having to do that every year, the idea of coming up with it again would just annoy the heck out of me.
Yep, absolutely.
Because I remember the year before we had this, and it was like $500-600 plus. You give them a little extra to have all the leaves raked and all.
Yep.
I mean, to me, it feels like a tax.
It is a tax. And the thing is, these, the towns that do decide to charge all these extras, they're not taking anything off the bottom line. You're still paying as much as you were the year that your kid could get on the school bus without anything extra coming out of his or her pocket, compared to the next year when you are. But at least it's when those services are in your tax bill, unless something changes in Congress and all their wisdom as of late, we can at least still write off our property taxes. And if all of those things are still included in our property taxes, that's another benefit, or at least one that a lot of people I know appreciate. So I think we get a lot of services, and then when you look at our tax bills, they're still far less than our surrounding towns, including all those services.
I always love when the surrounding towns compare themselves and say, well, our rate, our $4,900 rate is about the same as Milford's average. But then I say, wait a minute, designer trash bags.
Yep.
One town charges $400 or $500 per kid to ride a bus.
To ride the school bus, yep.
I mean, I keep laughing, saying, someday are they going to, when they call TUI, they call Bill up and say, my house is on fire, they expect him to say Visa or MasterCard. How
Yep.
far do you go?
Yep.
I mean,
But I think that's the philosophy that so many of us have here. And I think that, I think we're still now granted, things can change like that. You change this board, you change that board, you elect people that think that that's okay and that that's beneficial, then you're gonna see things like that. But I still think we're very far away from even having that for an argument. Because I think even if people have those ideas, I think we should be spending to the levy limit, to think that we should be going for 2.5 overrides because they have a list of things that we're not providing for them, which I'm not sure what those are. But even if people like that wanted to run for office, they know they can't speak about them. They can't. That can't be their platform. It's just not the way we do business here.
we had somebody say they wanted to go in front of town meeting for a 2.5 override.
Yes.
And I told them I thought that was great. And they were surprised. I said, the comic relief would be wonderful.
Well, I'd be afraid of the tomatoes and the other harder fruit that might come your way.
Over the last couple years, our current chairman, the good Dr. Moran, got into a heated debate when we had extra money. And he led the charge to give back to the taxpayer.
Yes.
If somebody was to ask you, how do you feel about the fact that we've given back 1.5 to 2.8 million
Per year.
per year, every year? Because I remember Chris and a couple of us taking a lot of heat saying it's not sustainable. You shouldn't give it back and let people get used to it.
Right. I think we've already proven them wrong, quite simply. I know sometimes I give very simple, not very sexy answers, but it's been proven. And I think as long as we can.
I guess the question is, Willie, should we?
Should we? Of course we should.
Why?
Because it's not just that $1.5 million to $3 million in an individual year. It's all of those years collectively that we haven't grown local government. Because again, what are we going without? I don't think we're going out without anything right now. So with that, everything grows exponentially. So even if we only raise to 2.5%, only the maximum, obviously without an override, you raised government. If you spent that $3 million rather than saying, hey, we just supplied everything we needed to, or that was asked of within reason for the town of Milford, and we have $3 million left over in the kitty. That should go back to the taxpayers. Could we find things to spend $3 million on? Of course we could.
Oh, dang.
But then the budget grows that much, and then the next year you're starting off 2.5% on top of
We've got people that we've
$3 million.
said we could give you $100 million and you'd find ways of spending it.
Of course. But I think it goes back to that discipline. And again, it's justifying the expenditure. There's a lot of talk out there. We talk about possible capital projects in the future. There's a lot of talk. Like Milford High School is now.
There's a school coming.
Well, I hope there's not a school coming, because I don't know where that school of that size would be
not a
built.
new school, but there's some renovation.
Oh, absolutely. And we're overdue. But I think even from a selectman's point of view, we have to be on board and figure out the best way to support the school department, and whether it's a school building committee, and making that argument to town meeting that when is the right time to start that project, because we're never going to be able to relocate those kids, so it's never going to get done at once. And as far as I know, there's no place or no better place to have a school than where it is right now.
When we did Brookside, we took heat for 8 or 9 years because we kept putting money away, taking the stabilization fund.
Yes.
But to shut Brookside down, we basically built half of a new elementary school.
Yes.
And that was only 300 kids.
In 2 locations.
Right. 300 kids.
Yep.
Where the heck would we put 1,200?
You can't. But that's why it'll be interesting, like whenever those talks seriously take off, and where the school committee is going to want to go from there. Because I mean, I just picture it that they'd probably have to do a wing at a time.
See, I think that's the perfect, in my mind. You do a field house because we want to take care of the kids in the athletics.
And that's been long overdue.
When you go to Shrewsbury in there and you look around and you say, wow. I mean, we got a great pool, but the courts and all, we need some work. And that's been 40 years coming.
Absolutely.
Then academically, see, I'm in the same place you are. I look at Milford High, it's a bunker.
Yeah.
That thing was built forever.
Yeah.
So you build a wing, you move kids in, you build another wing. By the time you're done, we've got a new school,
Yep.
but we haven't spent the $200 million.
Exactly. And unless things change, you still get a higher rate of return from the state on renovations of a building, as we know. That's why we did Stacy Memorial and Brookside. That you get a higher percentage of reimbursement renovating a building than you do building a new one. And remember when Newton North built their new school and it was
$200 million.
The rest of the state was losing their mind. But if you look at Milford High School, now granted, everything's dated, and a nice new facade would look good. I mean, I want that to look like a modern building in the near future. And I think it will. But you try to replicate the size, the footprint, the terrazzo flooring. I mean, that place, well, you said it, it's a bunker. You'd never be able to build that building for less than...
Well, but not only that, you wouldn't get the SBA.
No.
Because when they do their square foot per pupil, we'd have to shrink.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's open space. There's, it's amazing.
I mean, it is a nice footprint. Something we can be proud of.
Absolutely.
And when we first went there and Paul Revere built it for us, it was state of the art.
Yep.
I remember because we moved in the end of '73. We were the first ones out in '74. It had telephones in every room. We thought that was the coolest.
You weren't the class that had the ball bearings fight the first.
No.
Broke all the windows in the cafeteria.
No. Now we start looking at issues. The opioid issue is here.
Oh, yes.
I don't want it to be here, but you think about back in the '70s when Johnny Carson did the Carmack with Milford, Massachusetts.
Yep.
And people forget that on national goddamn TV, he said, what's the third largest per capita drug center? That was back 40 years ago.
Yep.
And we got over it.
Yes.
But now it seems like we're suffering the same way every town across the nation is suffering.
And I think, and again, it's certainly not a benefit, but that's the difference now. When Milford was going through that time in the early 70s or late 60s, whenever it was, there wasn't other communities that were dealing with those similar problems around us. Now, never mind around us, across the whole country, this is going on. And I'm literally seeing it firsthand. The chief of police, Tom, sends us a text, the Board of Selectmen, among the Board of Health and some other folks, every day, not a collective text, but a text every time there's a person who ODs. Fatal or not, he texts us. There are some days where there's 5, 10 texts. There's other days where there's 1. But it's almost, it's on a regular basis, sad to say. But he does all this number crunching and comparisons, and everyone's in the same boat. I think that's why it's getting the attention it's getting. And I think that's probably a pretty obvious statement. But I think that's why you have the president talking about it. You have Congress talking about it. You have our governor, who's definitely putting his money where his mouth is when it comes to try to fund more beds. And they've decriminalized a lot of the activity so that they can get people help, not just arrest them. But we have Narcan. The chief just gave us an update. We have Narcan in every police car, multiple.
Now, it's nice that everybody's talking about it. I'm more impressed that your board led an article to add additional funding.
Yep.
Why?
I think because every member of the board is seeing this, like I said, whether it's getting a text at 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon. I think it's people that have personally been affected by it. I don't think there's one person on the board that doesn't know a family that's affected by this. I think I can say that. I know that I know a couple of families. And, you know, it's no longer, again, these you know, fallacies that it's these people or those people.
Well,
it's all
Willie,
the people.
when we
It's
grew up,
everybody.
if you said a heroin addict, it was a sleazy guy in a car, you know, a back alley in Boston.
Yep.
It wasn't the girl who plays soccer who hurt her knee, or the
Yep.
the neighbor's son who played football and injured himself.
No.
I mean, all of a sudden, again, them is us.
Yep. Well, what's really, actually, and I guess this is my, you know, being naive to a lot of it too a few years ago. I mean, not only, you know, am I afraid we could lose a generation of people to this, but we just had someone OD last week who's 58 or 59
Yes.
years old. That one was one was fatal a few months ago, a 58-year-old, and there was someone in their early 60s. I mean, this is going from 14 to so far that I have personally
Well, that was
known,
the thing
60
that
years
amazed
old.
me is, I'm 61, and I'm sitting there saying, there's somebody my age that got hooked?
Yep.
So you've gone your whole life clean, and then you become an addict.
Yep.
There's something not right here that we got to deal with.
Absolutely. Well, and I think this is why, I mean, I think doctors are paying more attention, obviously. I mean, now, I mean, there were some prescriptions that, you know, there are no refills. You have to either go and justify, and they'll only write a 10-day supply when they used to, you know, used to walk out with, what, a 30-day supply and 5 refills, you know, or whatever the
Well,
math
I mean,
was.
the other thing, too, is I was really impressed that Tom has that safe in the police station where
Oh, yeah.
he said, you can walk in with a bag of heroin. We're not looking. Throw it in there, we'll get rid of it.
Yep.
But you can be safe.
Yep.
Not that we want citizens here to have a bag of heroin, but,
Nope.
you know, when you look at some of the old prescriptions for painkillers,
Yep,
used to be you left them in your,
of course.
right in the bathroom, right in the medicine cabinet, you
You
never
might need
cared.
it again someday.
Now all of a sudden they're telling you be careful because your kids, or my kids would never do that, but maybe the kids' friends who come to your house,
Yep. Everyone uses the bathroom, you know, and they go in there. You know,
there it is.
People are saying if you're going to keep your pills there, you got to count your pills, and I can't imagine having to do that, but it's the way it is for a lot of folks.
When
now.
we think of pain, the word water company comes up.
Major, yep.
Major pain. I know you can't say everything, but when people turn around and say, huh? Well, okay, we gave you the money. We said, go ye forth and
Yes.
buy.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And negotiations certainly broke down in literally the last hour of the last year. I'm beyond comfortable and very confident to let people know that the town of Milford and all its representatives have negotiated in good faith. We had a letter of intent. That letter expired. Some things on the other side changed and kind of started to renegotiate. You know, the communication is still going on, but I mean, I think even a year ago on your show, or at least over the last year, we were talking that the one thing the three of us aren't going to do is sign something that isn't right for the town of Milford. So we negotiated, we got to certain numbers, and we're standing by those. Now we have moved forward to go before the Department of Public Utilities. We're probably gonna have to come to town meeting at some point and ask for some more money to keep that going. I think there's some benefits to going to the Department of Public Utilities. It adds time, but some things will probably change. But again, negotiating in good faith this whole time should only help us. So again, we are still not gonna be bound by anything. And if we can strike, again, the best deal for the town of Milford, then that's what we'll do. Because we're not gonna agree to something that isn't the best.
There's a program that you have a bit of insight in, more than most, but you hear the critics saying, because we have such a good special needs program, we're drawing kids from other towns and helping them. If somebody came to you and said that, how would you respond?
Well, first, I'd probably tell them that they're right. And I'm proud of that. I like to tell people this because people who just know me as of recent don't realize that, I was on the school committee prior to being married and to prior ever having a child, certainly ever having a child with special needs. But
Yeah, thank God you found Lisa who would marry below her.
Exactly. No, I definitely made out.
Yes, you definitely
I
went
married
up.
But I'm really proud that early on we started building special education programs in Milford. Really, I think for selfish reasons. We wanted to keep our own Milford kids in Milford.
We want to take care of our own kids.
Exactly. And, rather than sending, they have disabilities, we're going to send them off, regardless of what it costs to send them out rather than educating them in town, which is certainly more beneficial, which I learned, but also, whether a child has disabilities or not, they want to still be with their friends. They want to be with their neighbors. They want to be in school with their cousins. They don't want to get on a bus, and their first priority at 6 years old isn't to get on a bus and drive 45 minutes away from everyone they know. So it started that way. I mean, the Milestone program, you were on you remember that. We had a group of parents in town saying, we want the resources, but, you either have to send us here or you have to give it to us here. We built a whole program in the town of Milford in cooperation with the New England Center for Children. You don't get better than that. And again, that's one of my most proudest moments. I met a whole group of parents that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And come to find out, they ended up being a resource for me when Lisa and I found out that we were having a child with Down syndrome. So it is amazing how things work out, but again, it's all about keeping our kids here. Now, I do know that people do say that, and I just met someone as of recent who moved into Milford. And they said, we 2 children, and one of them has special needs, and they moved here for that very reason, because they know the support's here. But they also know that their other child is going to do well here too. So I don't know. I'm pretty proud of that.
If the worst thing we face when we get hopefully north on that final bus ride is we helped kids around Milford while we were taking care of our own,
Yeah.
I guess that doesn't seem too bad.
No, not at all.
It's something we should be-
I'm sorry. I'm even kind of catching on. I think I even missed part of that when you brought up that I've talked about how we started taking care of our own kids, and now you talk about some other kids that are
Small
getting here.
population that are also benefiting.
Yeah, but they're also they're also paying to ride. But they get a reduced rate. Everyone pays, and it takes them from point A. And the bus is going that way anyway. So I'd rather get the ridership up. I'd rather collect the fares.
But
Everybody wins.
Would you agree, and you may be biased, but these kids are no more special, no less special than the 4,200 other kids we have in our school system?
Absolutely. Well said.
They're our kids. They bleed Milford red,
Yeah.
whether they're Milford or visiting.
Yeah.
So you talk about the bus.
Yes.
We have a bus service.
Yes.
And
we just got a report from Scott Crisafulli and his committee, the transportation committee that he chairs. Ridership is up. It's going to continue to grow. That's how transportation starts. That's my day job. Ridership has ebbs and flows. It's affected by weather. It's affected by a lot of things. But we have a group of people across the spectrum that are taking this to go to point A to B.
should we have public transportation in Milford?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because it's serving all the purposes we just talked about. The 22 kids I think that Jen Walsh and the high school staff has that is taking that bus, off and on. Some kids are taking it every day. Some kids don't need to take it every day, but they're going to work. I would always support subsidizing a bus for a young man or a young lady that want to get on a bus because they won't be able to drive or can't drive, and to go get a job. That's what the priority should be. The priority should be getting these folks out working, socializing, living. And for that reason we have to subsidize, one of the reasons we subsidize transportation, I'll always support that.
See, and I'll agree with you, subsidizing transportation. But what do you say to people when they say, well, are we evaluating, is the bus the right way, or a Milford Uber system? Should we be evaluating it or just have a bus?
Oh, no, I think you always have to evaluate it. I mean, I have to, even in my day job, I have to report, you know, what we collect in fares, you know, what the ridership is, things of that nature. I mean, you have to stay on top of that, and we should. That also keeps us in check to say, you know, we want to grow from X to Y, and so I don't think anything should go unchecked.
An issue that comes up all the time in the media, immigration,
Yes.
that we have a large immigrant population in Milford. What do you say to that?
I think it appears we do. I think we see it in the school system. Again, we go back to our schools. I think they get affected by it the most. And then I think the rest of us get affected by it, you know, based on what some of the side effects to maybe a ton of immigration means. And I think that goes back to, hey, if you're here, I don't blame people for coming here. But we may have a different set of rules, and we may have we certainly have different laws when it comes to sanitation and things like that people have to adhere to. That's where, you know, my patience wears thin, where whether it's related to immigration or not, we are going to keep a certain level here.
We're going to keep Milford healthy. I don't care what your background
Healthy,
is.
clean, and if it's not clean, and again, I go back to a story I'm very proud of. I was getting reports of overcrowding at a house. I'm getting told by the building commissioner's office that that house has been inspected. I sat outside. I went up to the porch and counted 7 names on a mailbox. 7 different last names on one mailbox. And that there wasn't overcrowding. I went back on trash day. I have a full-time job. And this is where I get a little upset. I'm sitting outside and I'm seeing these mounds of trash. I know how much my family of 3 generates. There was a ton. So if I have to do that, I will continue to do that. But I want to get to the point where, you know, where we're working with the Board of Health, getting our building department up and running again so that we can just stay on top of this. I don't think you can inspect properties every 5 years or every 3. I think we have to stay on top of it. The task force has to be up. We have to be out there. When I first got elected, they were meeting. They were going through neighborhoods. I was lucky enough, had the opportunity to go 3 times with them. And I just think that as long as we have the housing stock that we have, and human nature being what it is, if absentee landlords, if they can get away with something, maybe they will. They'll try. It's up to us to make sure that we stay on top of it, because we have to stay healthy, we have to stay clean, and, you know, we have a lot of pride here.
Absentee landlord, Town of Milford at Middle School East. What's going on?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Well, the school system did take a year, and it was their building, so I mean, until they named it surplus, the Board of Selectmen or anyone else didn't have the right. We could criticize if we wanted to, that doesn't help, but it was their building. So they took a year to see how they could use it. As far as I understand it, they decided that they were gonna name it surplus. They did. We went through 3 drafts. Once the Board of Selectmen took ownership of it, we then took 3 drafts to put out an RFP. And actually, on my way here tonight to record this show, the bids closed, and we got 1 bid. I haven't been able to go through it yet. I started looking on my phone, and then we came in to record. So very shortly, we'll at least be able to look at that bid. But right off the bat, without even reading the bid yet, I know that my priorities remain that I don't want a vacant building on Main Street. If the school department and or the town weren't going to use it, it's got to get on the tax rolls in one shape or form. And I think what goes there is going to be very important because it's right there in the center of town. I remember it had to be, I mean, it has to be close to literally 10, 12, maybe, I don't know how many years ago now. Paul Mazzucchelli and I did a radio show on WMRC with Ed Thompson, and we talked about, because our educational plan that at one point called for leaving that building as it is now, that we were talking about using it for school, for community use, for extra offices in town, from town hall, just because we did not want it to be vacant. And in all those years, my opinion has not changed. Now, it's been decided not to use it for the schools. The town has put it out for an RFP. We'll see what the bid is, what that looks like, and whether we have to go out again, or if this bid will suffice. But I think it's very important in what goes there, and that, but whatever it does, it's got to go on the tax rolls. If the town's not going to use it, I just remember all those years me growing up before Stacy was remodeled, and just looking at that boarded granite building, it bothered me then as a 12-year-old, just like going after and taking those buildings on Central Street. There's just, I'm going to keep moving on these things. Town meeting and finance committee can help and support us, or they can shoot me down. But either way, we're going for more.
So people look and say, why are you buying old beat-up buildings on Central Street?
Mm-hmm. I think all you have to say is, which I did say, drive by. And those buildings should be down, 2 of those buildings should be down by March. The larger building that the Stone family owns, they're going to probably hold on to that and still use it, even though we're the owners. But that building is structurally sound. The other 2 with collapsed roofs, there's no excuse for that. So, and I don't think the landlords were amenable to it. So, I think it's just whether we get to it and expand the parking lot, or it's green space, or we decide, or a future board decides what to do with it. But it's no longer going to be a danger to people, and with all the other businesses that are popping up around there, those aren't going to be their neighbors anymore.
Well, you were on record saying you wanted to see the Main Street by Sacred Heart cleaned up. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden there's this beautiful building there.
Yes.
Right across from the studio we had a gas station that wasn't really exciting, and now we got a beautiful medical center.
Yes.
I mean, those things just have to make people feel better, and they bring in more money.
Of course they do. But again, I think it starts with people talking about it. And again, those privately owned homes, I'm not telling people that they have to leave. I mean, first of all, we don't have the ability or the authority to take homes from people unless it meets a very specific criteria. None of that, which is the case. But I think it's another entrance into town. So when you turn to that corner and you had all of that old property that now is the dental office, I mean, it just opened everything up. And we got the trail there. You got the fields behind it. It's just, I think we're making a lot of headway.
So now, if you had one new project, King Willie gets to wave the magic wand, what do you think you'd want to do?
Well, I've talked about this a lot. And being a selectman really doesn't have anything to do with it other than incentivizing our property owners as much as we can. But I still want another a restaurant or a pub or a tavern on Main Street. When you look at Marlborough and what they did, you look at Hudson, and we have a downtown revitalization committee now that I formed, and they're doing a lot of work. I think that could change everything. Again, we don't have a ghost town anymore. When the malls opened years ago, Main Street shut down. Main Street is not shut down. Actually, there's very few vacancies, if any. But it just depends on what kind of businesses we're looking for down there. And I'd like to see something. I'd like to see something like that. And I think that by talking about it, maybe a property owner down there, when a lease comes up or something like that, they'll take a chance. And we're a town that gives incentives. And I think we need to do whatever it takes to get something, because that's how you get the foot traffic. People go out to eat, they go for a coffee, they bring their laptop and, just escaping the house for a couple hours and want to sit and maybe do a paper or do some work or read the newspaper. We don't have that nighttime foot traffic anymore. We do down at 89 Main Street, which is a great restaurant, but nothing further. I mean, I go to Pizza Chef to get my pizza. It's right there. They do a great job. But maybe if there was another place on Main Street where Lisa and I could go have a nice dinner when my mom's willing to babysit and have a night out.
Recently, people got confused. They got a note that we're having another referendum on pot.
Yep, it is confusing.
And they're saying, okay, last time no meant yes unless it was a Tuesday where Buddhists worship at the temple, and nobody could figure it out. What's going on with this new referendum? A lot of us thought it was done.
Yep. The first referendum, we'll start there, was voted on that people said, we don't want any retail marijuana shops in the town of Milford. That language, which was adopted, was also language that was adopted in other towns and passed the test in the AG's office. So some folks thought that was the
Safest, easiest way.
safest, easiest way. But when that change was put in and voted on, there were two businesses in town that one negatively got impacted, and one could have negatively been impacted. And the lab that tests all cannabis products across the country and around the world, I was super impressed. I didn't even know, I've been driving by it all these years.
Didn't even know it was there.
Had no idea. I read the sign. I had no idea when the owner called me to meet him and to talk about this stuff. I knew exactly where to go, but I didn't know what they did. And the other was Sage Medicinals, which is our medical marijuana cultivation business in town, where we were the first town in the Commonwealth to support medical marijuana. And if you remember, that was unanimous at town meeting. So again, we were very progressive and where we wanted to be. But the way the legislation was written and even tweaked was the medical marijuana folks have already gone through this severe vetting. So they should be able to almost pre-qualify, so to speak, if they wanted to go into the recreational market.
So this is not trying to overturn.
No. Why we need another referendum is we went to town meeting and to pass the bylaw, and like we're allowed to, it's democracy, an amendment was made. An amendment was made that protected these two businesses going forward, which most of us supported, I certainly did, and that was voted on. So once the amendment to town meeting was changed, or the amendment changed the bylaw was different from the language that we voted on, goes to the AG's office, all the lawyers throw that around, they come back and say, yes, your amended bylaw fits the bill, however, in order for that to be truly legal, you have to send it back out to the voters.
Willie, we're coming to the end. I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Well, I hope over the years I've proven myself. I hope that I stand up for the commonsensical approach that most people in Milford support. That's always been the message back to me. I hope I'm still, fit the bill. I'm engaged. I fight, and I fight for what I believe in, and I fight what I think is best for this town. And I love Milford, and I really want to serve another 3 years.
On that, we'll leave it. And you got a great wife and a really cool kid.
The best.
As always, I'll never ask you, personal feelings aside, to vote for any specific candidate. But Milfordians, I'll beg you, get to know the candidates and get out and vote. This year especially, we're going to have a lot of people stepping up, get to know what each of them stand for, the two selectmen, the two selectmen candidates, the 7 candidates for school, and then get out and vote. Thank you for everything you've done for us. And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless, and may tomorrow be a better day than tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not too long since I've been home.